What's going on, guys? Sekapoko here, bringing you my second ever guide for Final Fantasy Dissidia Omina. We're going to be going over in this video. We'll be going over Squall and my go-to kit on exactly how I build my Squall, how much damage I'm doing, and of course I'm doing a run, so you can see kind of the characters I would run him with, as well as what the best makeup for Squall is. So, guys, without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right into it. One of the characters that is mostly used on the global version of Final Fantasy Dissidia Omina is going to be Squall. And right now, Squall is the top character for clearing cycle quests as well as clearing endgame content, because he has a large amount of damage and he's able to clear a lot on the entire field of enemies because of his wave clear type mechanics. So first thing, let's go into Squall and talk a little bit about him. Squall has two abilities that are going to come up. The first is going to be Solid Barrel, and the second is going to be Renzuken. Now, Squall kind of has a mechanic in his kit where he is one of those characters that you don't want to have too much Brave on before you use an ability. The reason for that is that Squall has two ways that he can use his abilities. Solid Barrel is a 4-hit melee Brave attack that is going to give himself a buff, which is going to give you initial Brave up. And this is actually a very, very helpful buff for Squall. You're also going to get one additional Brave attack when your Brave is less than 250% of your initial Brave. So the initial Brave value is basically the value that you have going into the room, and that's how much Brave you get as you start the turn, before any break damage and everything gets onto your character, etc. Now, if you go above 250% of your initial Brave, you're actually going to do less damage than if you were below 250% of your initial Brave, which is a very interesting thing about Squall. But being able to raise your total initial Brave increases that cap, so you can actually have more Brave on your character, so you don't have to worry about if another character on your team is going to break a target and gives you that break damage bonus and put you over that 250% threshold. Or if you have another character on your team that is going to give you Brave as part of one of their abilities. So that's why Squall is kind of one of those characters that you really want to have this initial Brave up bonus on. Solid Barrel is going to do that 5-hit. Solid Barrel Plus is going to change when you have Brave below 250% of your initial Brave, which is actually going to be a 5-hit melee combo attack, which is the difference of that one additional attack that they're talking about on the normal Solid Barrel. The second Squall ability is Renzo Kukin. We call it Renzo. Letting you know, everybody calls it Renzo. No one says the whole thing. When you pop Renzo, you're actually going to get a 3-hit melee Brave attack and then followed by an HP attack. So you're actually going to get a total of 6 hits when you start the chain, you're actually below 250% of your initial Brave. So both of Squall's abilities are based off you having a low amount of Brave when you start your attack rotation, with Squall in particular. So if you do have below 250% of your initial Brave, you're actually going to do a 6-hit melee attack versus a 3-hit melee attack, giving you double the damage that you would have initially versus your total amount of damage, which is a very, very powerful hit. Now, there are other things that are tagged on the Squall and other abilities that you get later on, depending on the gear sets you have with Squall. For example, you're actually going to have an EX ability with Squall, which is going to be called Assault Trigger. And this Assault Trigger ability is only available if you have the Squall EX weapon or the 70 CP weapon on him as well. Now, this is going to be an 8-hit melee Brave as well as HP attack, as well as giving yourself a buff called Lion's Heart 1. This Lionheart 1 buff is basically going to give you a nice melee damage buff. Let's go over the gear you could possibly have for Squall. There are a total of 4 real weapons that you can have for Squall on the global version. There is also there are 2 sets of armor. Now, with any character, you're going to have 15 CP weapon, which is the normal weapon that you would have, and the normal 15 CP weapon is called the Twin Lance. Then there's a side weapon, which is a weapon that's only available on special banners, whereas the Twin Lance weapon is available on every single banner in the game. The Soul Blade is not available on every single banner in the game. It is only available on specific banners where it does show that it is available. So it is a much more rare weapon to get, and it's a harder passive to get. Now, typically these passives are for characters that you really want to maximize, and only when you want to get this Soul Blade weapon if you really want to work on one character and try to get that one character to the maximum potential. And that's what people call a main, basically. You want to, if you're maining Squall and you're going hard in on Squall and you really want to maximize Squall's potential, then you need to have that Soul Blade as well. And of course, there is the Cutting Trigger, which is Squall's 35 CP weapon, which is a very good weapon. Probably the most powerful in his entire kit besides the EX weapon. For a lot of characters in the game, the 35 CP weapon really enhances a character's strengths and gives him a lot more damage potential. And then finally, there is the Shear Trigger, which is Squall's EX weapon. And the Shear Trigger allows you to get an EX ability, and that's that extra ability that we saw at the end, which of course was the Assault Trigger ability from before. Now, these abilities are really good because they actually give you an infinite chain of these EX abilities, but of course, with Squall, you really want to have that 35 CP passive as well as the 15 CP passive in order to maximize your damage potential. Now, the passives on Squall for these weapons, of course, the Cutting Trigger is going to give you the Renzukin potency, which is basically the amount of damage that an ability will do, and lowers its action delay, which means that it's going to be faster. It's going to grant a small amount of max brave up as well as small attack up for 5 turns, which is usually attack up 1 and max brave up 1. That's usually what it means. Soul Blade, which is the secret weapon, which is harder to get, is going to slightly increase the initial brave and max brave when your HP is over 80%, which is a really good ability for Squall because it's a passive ability that's on your character. It's not a buff that you have to apply to your character. It's just passively on Squall all the time. It is a very helpful thing to have, especially when you're in higher damage situations or you have characters that give you a lot of brave. And finally, the Twin Lance is going to give you increases the potency of Solid Barrel, which makes your Solid Barrel do more damage. Going into the CP passives for Squall, the ones that are really important for Squall are, of course, going to be the Critical Power, the Solid Barrel Power, Chase. A lot of these are very important, and going through them, you're going to need almost all of them, if not all of them. The ones that are the least important are the Chase bonus passive. Now, this Chase bonus passive is very good on certain teams, but not always necessary on Squall. Now, what happens on Chase bonus is that it's going to slightly raise the brave damage during a chase sequence. That means that if you're doing a launch where the characters fly up in the air, if you use a brave attack on Squall while the character's in the air, you'll actually deal more brave damage because of this chase bonus. Now, you typically, when you're in a chase sequence, want to use an HP attack in a lot of situations because you'll get more damage out of it to the boss, but sometimes you have to use a brave attack. Now, chase bonus is the least important of all of these passives to have, so if you had to pick between this chase bonus versus a very good artifact passive, this one can go. Now, every character in the game is going to have a 50 Crystal Awakening. Now, over time, there's going to be released on 60 Crystal Awakenings, which means it's going to raise the level cap of the characters to level 60, as well as the crystal cap of the characters to 60, giving them a little bit more stuff. So these characters are going to be... now, these characters are going to increase the amount of damage that they do massively, and these characters are very buffed. And that's why Squall is one of the best characters in the game right now. Now, getting those extra passives on, he's gonna get a CP passive, which is gonna increase it his max CP or cost points by 50, which is every character at level 60 is gonna have. Then it's gonna have the buff attack boost, which is going to moderately raise his max brave as well as attack with active buffs, which is a very important passive to have. Solid Barrel Extension, which is a very big priority passive to have because it's going to give you 1 extra Solid Barrel use, as well as give you a slight damage boost to your Solid Barrel. And then when you're using Solid Barrel Plus, you actually will trigger an HP attack if you actually have up to 80% of your maximum brave after the last hit in your Solid Barrel. Turning Solid Barrel into most hits, having an HP attack after the brave attack, which is a brave HP attack, basically. So that is a very, very big thing to have on Squall. Huge, huge, huge buff to him just by having this. The next ability he has is 58 CP, which is a high speed buff, which makes him the perfect character to have for crystal farming or for cycle quest farming, however you want to call it, which allows him to get large speed with active buffs. So he's going to give himself a passive boost, which is not actually going to be present on the character, and give you a huge speed buff whenever you have a buff on Squall. It's not per buff, but it is if he has any buffs at all. So if you have a buff on Squall that will never be removed, he will have that high speed amount, which is really good. It's also going to then the next one, of course, is going to be Renzoku extension, which is the best ability for Squall right now, which is going to give you one more use of Renzokuken. I can never say it. And then it's going to give you a slight brave damage boost. But the thing that makes this amazing is it's going to give you a moderate brave damage boost on Renzoku Plus, and Renzo is Plus is going to give you a 50% HP damage to non-targets, which is basically an AoE. So on your main target, you will do the normal damage, and half of that damage is going to be translated to the other two characters on the field, giving you an AoE type attack on one ability, which is extremely strong. Whereas Solid Barrel Extension will do something similar. On the last hit of your Solid Barrel Plus, what will happen on Solid Barrel Extension is that you will actually hit every single character on your field with the last hit of Solid Barrel, giving a huge brave attack to the entire field. Now, one of the things about Squall is that you're going to need a lot of different things on Squall to maximize his potential. And every single character in the game has different passives that are specific to the character. But everyone's going to have the normal stat passives, like 108 attack, maximum brave 330, initial brave increase, etc. So all of those are very, very good. On Squall, the old meta was going to have initial brave on Squall increase because that allows you to use Renzoku Plus a lot more often and at higher brave values, which was really valuable to have. Now with a boost to Solid Barrel, you're actually not in need of that anymore. And the number 1 and number 2 passives to have on your Squall are going to be Attack 108, which is going to be the highest attack value you can get, and Mighty Renzokuken. The third priority would probably be Max Brave 330, which increases your maximum brave and your total amount of damage dealt to everybody on the field. Any of those 3 passives are the ones you really want for Squall, and that's where you really want to focus in order to maximize your damage on Squall. And the main reason you're going to want Mighty Renzo instead of wanting Mighty Solid Barrel or Max Brave 330 is because the thing that you're most using Squall for is cycle quests, giving yourself more damage. Now obviously these artifact passives aren't something that are super needed right now, and I highly recommend that if you are a global player on Final Fantasy Dissidia Opera Omnia, you don't try to farm artifact passives to death, because right now we only have the 4-star artifacts and not the 5-star artifacts, which will be coming out I don't know when, but when they do come out, they are much easier to get for 2 stars and the like. So you don't need to farm to death. Well, guys, I hope you guys enjoyed this video for my Final Fantasy Dissidia Opera Omnia tutorial for Squall, some of the things about him and how the gameplay works. If you guys did like the video, of course, like, subscribe, all the fun stuff, and you guys have a great rest of your day.